Welcome back to the Comic Book Historians Podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have Rob Liefeld, the action superhero genius that pioneered a brand new flavor of comic books in the 1990s. Rob, thank you so much for being here.
Alex, always great to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
Continuing from our last interview, right? So this is essentially like part two, so many cool revelations from the last one. And for the audience to know, your podcast lays everything in absolute incredible detail. I mean, for anything anyone hears here, there's going to be like one sentence, there'll be an entire episode on his podcast. The details are incredible. The receipts are there. To continue from our last interview, we mentioned the inner child theme, your story as a kid up to launching Youngblood. It ran like the movie Star Wars. The episode 4, you were the first Generation X guy to make a huge impact in comics. I look at it as the Luke Skywalker that brings back the heroic super characters in the tradition of the old Jedi, Jack Kirby, Gil Kane. That flavor of comics seemed to fall in the face of an increasing amount of neurotic comic books. Okay. And you spearheaded Image to bring back the action superheroes and the extreme age. That is fact. You went to Greece and Rome recently.
Yeah.
It looked to me like a heroic Mecca in a way. I mean, how was seeing the mythos of the old gods, the old
Yeah.
myths, Ares, Mercury, Pan, Cable, and Deadpool brings back a lot of that energy. I mean, was this like a Mecca type of experience for you?
It was spectacular. And every time, we've been back a month, and every day my wife asked me, "What was your favorite part of our vacation?" I said, it was Greece because we had never gone. I believe I understand. I think you've been. I had never been to Greece, and I drank it all up. And when you are in, I'm really impressed with how they present the Acropolis and all of the. You feel like, oh man, I'm gonna go be part of this terrible tourist experience, but it's not that at all. We actually went for the last 2 hours of the day, so from 6 to 8, it was the lightest. I think the traffic, we were told it was the perfect time to go. It was beautiful, but walking through all of those ancient ruins and just it does inspire you, and it kind of I on my own. You mentioned my podcast recently. On an upcoming episode, I talk about how the Olympian gods, specifically Hercules, Marvel's Hercules, but every iteration of Hercules was always somebody who I really related to as a kid because I think he was temperamental. He wasn't refined. He was very emotional, and I think I was always drawn to those. So he's basically a flawed hero that great expectations were put upon, and he had to kind of navigate everyone else's expectations on top of his own desire to have his adventures. So, yeah, in a nutshell, I'll be honest, Alex, as I get older, there are memories. A photo will trigger a memory, and it will rush back into me. And it's clearly a memory that I've buried because I've been running so hard, so fast in this business. But with San Diego Comic-Con coming up, and there's a woman who's on the board. I don't know what you call it, on the council. She's very much part of Comic-Con. Jackie Estrada. She shared a 1991 photo of me, and what's distinct in that photo is that I'm at the escalators. What do you mean at the escalators? And I'm not. You can see on my face I'm not terribly thrilled. And I remember family members had come to help me. That's the first year. Again, it washed over me. I was triggered immediately that this is the first year in this building. 1991 was the first time they entered into the new facility. It was only like Hall A, B, and maybe half of C, what would become eventually, and for a couple of years there in the 90s and the early 2000s, they kept adding all the way up to what we now have as Hall H, where the real estate ended. But X-Force had been out maybe a week or two. It was the biggest book in the country, the number one selling book. X-Men was inevitably going to outsell it, but it hadn't arrived yet. So X-Force was the belle of the ball. I'm there with some friends and family. We sit down in Artist Alley. a giant line of enthusiastic fans, the kind of fans that you didn't used to see at the shows either, because I'd been going there, and it was the I'd been going there since I was a kid, and now I saw the demographics skewed closer to the my own youth. All the image guys will tell you, whether it was the skateboard kids who were getting into baseball cards, who transferred some of that baseball card interest into, hey, let's check out comics. Whatever lured them in, they were suddenly appearing. And within about 30 minutes, San Diego security surrounded me. They said, we're stopping your signing and we're moving you off the floor. Off the floor? Like, again, I've only been in the business 5 years, and I've got the biggest book in the industry, but the lines are upsetting people. It's not something that they planned on. And they said, look, we'll tell people, where we're going to put you. I go, what do you mean off the floor? Follow us. They didn't tell us. Uh, we go off the floor beyond, the snack stands, beyond the concessions, out the doors where you will find the escalators and the stairs up to the upper levels. I mean, it's basically you're in the back, the back hallway. And they put me at a table. And here's the kicker. This is not, a photo gets shared. I share it. I'm very measured in how I share my feelings of that time, because it was a semi form of banishment. And somebody contacted me and said, Rob, I was at the end of that line. There was about 35 of us when they moved you. And I was 14 years old, and I could tell you were upset. You weren't taking it out on the customers. He said, you were so nice to me. I was like the second to last in line. And the line nobody ever lined up behind us. We were it. And you had been signing and talking to everybody. He said, but I could tell, like, it was almost like your feelings were hurt. Cause it's like, Alex, I showed up. I love the show. I'm now off the floor next to the escalators. And there's this photo that triggers all these memories. And the reason I'm sharing it with you is I think I just, like, this guy who contacted me said, and you told me that you were leaving pretty quickly, that it was obvious that I had informed this 14-year-old who contacted me through Facebook Messenger and told me this whole story. And it tracks. I actually know this person, and they're like, Rob, he said, my mom was with me and she felt bad for you. And you said, I think I'm not going to be back tomorrow. I think I'm going to, just pack up for the night and go back to Orange County, but I'm glad I was here. But it was just, it was, I think, the first time that the old guard met the new guard. And it was like, we represented something different, a different energy. It wasn't the same old setup. That there was, and look, what you get now, in that hall is, look, everything has to be reinvented all the time. Nothing stands still. Everything's changing constantly. It's up to you as the artist, as the manufacturer, whoever's making the stuff, whether that stuff is action figures or Funko Pops or comic books. You've got to keep up. But I remember the next year when we arrived as Image Comics. 1 year later, we're Image Comics.
Yeah.
And again, there were security guards. There was some hot tempers. And it was like, I think there was a realization of, what do we do with these guys?
Yeah.
It's a wave we can't stop. It's a wave we can't stop. And I guess I realize now that my career has been an odyssey of, like, overcoming all the obstacles, all the different obstacles. And as we saw with the passing of our mutual friend Jim Shooter, suddenly agendas that maybe people didn't know were there just completely, they run them up the flagpole. The guy has not been cold, and
Right.
people want to share agendas, and they want to punch down on a guy who is no longer among us. And what I'm saying is, I'm telling you, maybe another 10 years, and I can connect. I can tell all the agendas that I'm aware of, all the backdoor stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful in this place and time, because but some of these people, they are retiring, they're expiring, they're and there'll be a time to go, oh, hey, this was connected to this, and this was connected to this, and this was somebody who had a seat of power at this company, at this organization. Because I'm telling you, man, when I say it's the Odyssey, I do feel like it's I am up for the challenge, and
Yeah, you
that's
are.
what I think. I think that's what takes everybody by surprise because I get it. I don't ever relax. And what I said to my buddy this week, in my 40-year career, you can never relax. You can never take for granted that what is there today will be there tomorrow because someone else is trying to get to the same goal, and uh, uh, they are formulating their own game plan, and to grab that brass ring. And there's not an infinite amount of the brass rings, right? To,
That's
to achieve that level of success. So I'm going to take a break, and as you go, what did he just say? I will also ponder what I just said.
no, I'm following. Now, to prepare for this interview, I've enjoyed listening to hours of your podcast. Okay.
Yeah,
Like I need to collect information before I shoot my mouth off and ask questions. And as I'm asking questions, look, if I get something wrong, I need you to correct me.
yeah,
Okay. Because I am humbly listening. So
sure,
1992 and on, I'm seeing it as like there are some arcs. There's Empire Strikes Back, there's Return of
right,
the Jedi,
yeah,
and I don't think a lot of fans understand, some of the corporate and financial and legal pressures of all this stuff. So what I'm gathering from a lot of listening to your podcast is that your inner child managed to stay alive through these ups and downs. And
yeah,
and I'm thinking it takes more than just an inner child. It takes like the inner faith, the faith in purpose,
sure,
God, your place in
yeah,
the universe, family, to maintain the outlook that keeps your inner compass focused through like, I mean, there's gigantic sharks, okay, out there. All
yeah,
right. And not just individual sharks, groups of people can
sure.
become a shark. Like it's really something. Before I go on to my follow-up question, am I correct in reading this
All of it.
situation?
No, yeah, everything tracks. Everything tracks.
You founded Extreme Studios,
Yeah,
mega success with Youngblood, the
yeah,
first of Image Comics. There's Bloodstrike, Prophet, Supreme,
yeah.
high energy super team expansion. Okay, you're an IP factory with ideas that sell. And I liken you to being, a Tom Cruise style of entertainer because you're focusing on the stuff people need to see. As you're doing this, you're also, I think, fostering talent in the next generation of comic creators that are actually coming through. You gave a lot of people chances to prove themselves
Yeah,
who
yeah.
did. So, like, there's a comic creative renaissance here. How did that workflow generally work?
So I'm doing Youngblood. The focus of Youngblood is to just do those characters, those concepts. I can really work everything through that book. That's how I'm seeing it. And like the Fantastic Four that I had absorbed the entirety of the Kirby Stan Lee run and all of those characters that came through, whether it was Inhumans, Silver Surfer, Black Panther, Galactus. I mean, so much of the Fantastic Four was a conduit to a bunch of new worlds and new characters. And I said, well, this is what we'll do with Youngblood. Well, imagine. So there aren't a whole lot of Blood comics. Your audience should understand. In 1992, there's a lot of X books. There's some Batman books. There's some Spider-Man books. Blood is not a common name. So Youngblood number one does very well, exceeds all expectations, sells out of 1 million copies, has to go back to press, really lays the groundwork for everything that's coming. Spawn launches 3 months later. It's really, and there's an artist who just did a cover for me, one of the most in-demand guys in the business, and he sent me this lovely letter, and he said, Rob, outside of Archie comics when I was a kid, I really didn't interact with comics. And when I went to when I went to the comic store, Youngblood was the first comic I got, and then Spawn, and Youngblood and Spawn became like my first meaningful comic books. And he said, and they changed my life. Okay, the reason people say Youngblood and Spawn together a lot are because we were the only Image comics out for most of the summer of 1992. April, May, June, July, August. Then you get Savage Dragon and Shadowhawk, and I think Wildcats is in August of that year. It's later, but it was Youngblood, Spawn. We were out there kind of grabbing. We were the stuff that was available to purchase and available to interact with, and everything else represented a promise of something that was coming. But imagine after Youngblood launches, so this is the spring of 1992, you wake up about 6 weeks later and you see these announcements in the press. Marvel and DC I don't believe they did it together. I believe this is a coincidence, but each had the same agenda. Marvel announces that their summer crossover is called Bloodlines, or maybe that's the DC one. I think DC's is called Bloodlines, and I think Marvel's is called New Blood. And what's happening is in each annual for one of the companies is going to be a new character, and that's the New Blood, and the other one is Bloodlines. And I'm like, they're coming for me. Like you feel it. You wake up and you go, this is aimed at diminishing a competitor. Before you say, Rob, you're crazy, I have evidence from 24 hours ago of one of the top two companies identifying what we are doing at Image as competitive, telling another person, well, they said, why doesn't this company upset you? Because they're not a competitor to us. Actually, the words were, they're not a threat to us like Image Comics. This is 2025. This is 2025. This is July 2025. These competitions are real. They have not diminished in any way, shape, or form. And right then, back in 92, they are leaning all the way. Like, I can tell you what they both saw. Oh, Liefeld thinks he's got a big thing with Youngblood. Bury it. This is what the corporate,
Yeah, totally.
salespeople bury it.
That's how they think.
Make blood super common. Everything is blood. Make it hard. At one point, a year later, in a Marvel comic, they had a group introduced called Young Blades. Look it up, Young Blades. Okay, so you're being fired upon,
Yeah.
and so I go, wow. Not only is it Bloodlines and New Blood are these two separate events happening over the spring, the summer, and the fall with the two major companies now. They're also introducing tons of new characters, which means names. And one of my a guy who I had really revered in my career and I looked up to had made a quote to a magazine and says, I don't like Rob Liefeld, but he has a thing. He actually said, I thought every good name in comics had been used, and this guy has names just like he just has great new names, pouring out of him. I think it's what he said, and I'm like, wow. You when other people talk about you, you've been noticed or marked, or you've got a mark on you. It's no different, as I say to people, than in sports. I always say to people, are you a Dodger fan? Do you hate the Giants? Do you hate the Padres? Are you a Yankee fan? Do you hate, the Mets? I mean, every fan base understands what it's like. Well, it's like that in comic books too. So my point is, what I'm leading up to, landing the plane, is suddenly I go, I'm not sure I can wait to introduce all these characters in the pages of Youngblood. So I'm going to announce Brigade. I'm going to announce Blood Strike. I'm going to get these out there since suddenly Blood is on the radar, and now new characters are going to be a thing. So I'm not sure my names are safe, because when you're a creator, names are everything. Names of titles, names of characters. I've got 5 new characters coming out in a book that's coming out in San Diego. I've got white silhouettes. I won't show you what's on the cover today. Somebody said, "Well, can you at least tell us their names?" No, I'm not going to tell you their names a week in
Yeah.
advance. That you're going to pick it up and you're going to discover. So names, designs. Well, this is the landing of the plane. This is the point. One of my partners at Image Comics at the time called me up and said, "Oh man, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, man. You see the money that's pouring in on Youngblood, and you're trying to get as many number ones out there as possible." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not it." And everyone around me knew, like, we didn't know that Brigade would sell 1 million copies. It suddenly caught fire. It caught fire, and everything that was coming out of Image, Brigade launched to 1 million. Bloodstrike launched to 1 million. That wasn't my master plan to make a lot of money. It was to get my creative stuff out there and protect my intent, because I was being hunted by the major two. Suddenly you're under the microscope, you're on their radar, you can feel it. So the excitement around doing those was, I won't be able to wait a year to do this. I'm feeling the pressure. Bloodlines, New Blood, giant corporate movements, boom. And yet, like I said, to this day, that this guy thinks I did it for purely transactional reasons. It was, I got to get this out here. I didn't believe that this brand new team of talent that I had assembled, Marat Michaels and Norm Ratman, would be received in the same way. Logic says that the reason the Youngblood book was doing well out the gate was because, and Spawn and all that, was because of our star power. I've often said the first 7 books of Image Comics, I mean, let's think about it. Were you really buying it for Spawn? Were you buying it? No, you were buying it for Todd McFarlane. What were you buying when you bought Youngblood #1? You were buying Rob Liefeld #1, Todd McFarlane #1, Jim Lee #1, Jim Valentino #1, so on and so forth. You had no history with those characters. They were coming out fresh, but I spun my stuff off and I was excited to do it, but I didn't do it. It wasn't part of a business plan. Oh, this is my next move, flood the zone. No, it was like, I gotta shoot up these flares. It was what I did out of desperation, worked out phenomenally, but we were not assembling the books with that in mind. And then slowly, it wasn't just that guy that I was hearing it from. Other people were starting to say the same thing. And it's like, no, you don't understand. And the reason I have all these characters is because I've been writing and drawing them on my lined paper and in my notebook since high school. And I haven't developed them most of my teenage life up until my young adult life to watch those names get hijacked or those designs. So really immediately being under in the pressure cooker, I'm like, I want to preserve what I have. And so, it wasn't part of it's cash out central. I'm not going to have the same luxury of time because what I've done has grabbed a lot of notice. And so I need to get this stuff out. And so Alex, it really was fast tracking, but I certainly, I'm 23, 24 years old at the time, and I'm surrounded by 20 somethings, and I do need talent to pull this off. And we started building Extreme Studios with, guys that I was meeting randomly. I met Marat as a teenager at a convention in Los Angeles. He was, 4 years younger than me. I probably was a senior. He was a freshman, or I was a junior high. But Marat was Marat was that 8th grade kid who was 6'1". Like, you're like, hey, you're taller than me. What do you mean you're 14, right? But we started talking and corresponding, and then when he could drive, I think 17 or 18, and his parents gave him the clearance, he started driving down to be my assistant, and then it became his full-time job about 1990 through the launch of Brigade, when he had his own gig as a penciler. But he would be my assistant, my roll dog, my carpool guy when I had to make FedEx, back when we had to actually get FedEx and put stuff in boxes and there were no scanners and there were no computers. Both of them are like superstar inkers. Danny Mickey, Norm Ratman, I met at comic book stores. They showed me their work at comic book stores, and they found they had a job a week later. So, there was a ton of robust, very sincere and organic energy. And I think people responded to that. And I was like, I saw a flyer in the office. Norm Ratman and Danny Mickey were doing a signing somewhere in Southern California in late 92. They'd both inked about 1 or 2 books. And Alex, I was like, wow, in my lifetime so far, in my following comics, I had never seen 2 inkers do store appearances. Joe Rubenstein and Dan Green, or I hadn't seen Terry Austin, and but my 2 inkers went, and I swung by, and there's 1,000 people. They were rock stars. These inkers who were just arriving on the scene, fresh with credits, were being received enthusiastically. And those 2 guys love the interaction. They love the fans. And so, look, I can just speak to the fact that we were filling a need, and what Image traded on, when you say the action dynamic, we, at a time when everything was getting smaller and smaller and smaller visually, we decided to go bigger, bigger, and bigger. And I kind of feel like I can draw tethers to right now. I can draw, this week, DC Comics announced DCKO, and part of the all fights, tons of action.
Yeah.
and this reflects what's going on in manga.
Yes.
Uh, and then I see and the best-selling book in the industry is Absolute Batman. Right book, right time, but it does not ever forget to whoop a bunch of ass. Batman is thumping down on people in a way that he does not in any other title. And my retailer buddies have told me, Rob, when a guy will bring his two friends in and he'll go, there, that's the Batman book where he kicks all the ass. Like, so there's times where we slow it down, and I love a good art film. I love a good look. I'm going to see Eddington tonight. I saw Materialist a couple weeks ago. I've always been. I like the slower, the quieter art films as much as I like the blockbusters. But you don't want to see me do a romance comic. You want to see me draw people kicking ass, right? So that's what we
I
did.
wouldn't mind seeing a Rob Liefeld romance comic, to be honest.
Trust me, Alex. You're very kind. That's never happening. But the thing is, I got so many more fists to throw, kicks to. I just, I am an action guy, right? And I can pop the raid in. It's great having boys as they grow up, and I've seen you do the same thing. I'll be a boys tonight. It's time to watch the raid. What's this, Dad? You're not going to care in 15 minutes, okay? You're going to be like, how is this guy kicking all these people's asses? And and then suddenly like, what else is like this? Oh, about 40 years of martial arts films. Where do you want to start? But look, action travels. It travels the world. We like books that have creative ways of kicking ass. Nobody did it better than Jack Kirby. He's kind of the touchstone for all that stuff.
Right.
If ever I'm in a funk, I don't. Right over here is my entire Jack Kirby bookshelf. Whatever I'm grabbing, the New Gods, Black Panther, Captain America, Thor, Fantastic Four, Machine Man, Devil Dinosaur, Devil freaking Dinosaur
Yeah.
is more exciting than 90% of the comics that I'm going to interact with, and it's very action based. Okay, so I don't like I said the time 1992 was crazy. We definitely enjoyed the time we had, but we were under the gun immediately. I was not threatened with lawsuits. My partners were. This character is infringing. That's their story to tell. They came at us legally. They came at us creatively. We were very much, and as I want to reiterate, just this week, reminded again, Image Comics is a threat because if creators continue to be empowered and have success being empowered, then that is less talent for the corporations.
Extreme was putting out more books than a lot of the other Image studios
Correct.
were. And so since each book paid, I like to follow money stuff too. So each book that paid a flat percent to Image,
Right.
so you were upholding most of the company's overhead. And so you're losing financially a little bit by supporting most of it that the other
Yes.
ones were kind of riding along the coattail of financially, possibly as far as operationally. So it sounds like the way Image cut off Malibu Studios, I think maybe partially, and if I'm correct or if I'm wrong, tell me, you funneled some of your output into the imprint Maximum Press in '94, which was outside Image with Evangeline, War Child, Asylum, Battlestar Galactica
Yep.
license.
Yep.
So to me, this makes sense. Like you're just doing a little bit of the same thing, like even out some of the output with the other people, like be a little more fair. But look, I still want to create, I still want to do like a whole bunch of stuff. So it seemed to me like a good balance, personally, just the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it created friction. It's an insane story from what I understand, and
Right.
people got mad. Maybe Todd got mad. You guys are friends now, of course, but there was friction at the time. Tell us about that, the exit from Image, and how does faith ground you in all this stuff?
Well, yeah, here's the deal. Whether you have whatever your faith, if you don't believe in yourself, look, it's scary to go out on your own in any iteration. It's scary. It's you have to let me start this by saying a talent contacted me this week. Said, Rob, I'm on this book. I've been listening to your podcast. The episode of the Rob Liefeld Show, which that's the YouTube version of it, all the podcast platforms, it's Rob Observations. They said the episode where you talk about the actual titles and the names of the different jobs and how they're broken down. He goes, I really was so interested in that. And he said, look, I've got some questions about my own input that I'm doing on this book that I'm working on. And I've talked to my other friends and they all think that I have a stance that I should be able to take on this. And it was, the part where business and art meet. He felt that he should be compensated for something that he was doing that maybe was being taken for granted. And I said, where do you stand on this? And I said, I agree from what you've just told me. If this is indeed the case, I believe that you have a leg to stand on and that you have a viable position. I said, but, and I need to really cover my base here, you're going to get brushback from this. This is not something that's not going to come with a tremendous reaction. This is not going to go well. And you have to be braced for that because I don't want to give you advice that's going to harm you. But you've come to me and I said, you've got to be very, just aware that this is going to, and he's like, I'm ready to ruffle the feathers. And I said, well, you're an adult. You've made this, you have made this decision for yourself. I said, good luck. I gave you it. You came to me. You asked for advice. I gave you advice. And then I cautioned you that doing this is going to probably create maybe, it's going to upset the apple cart. And when you raise your hand in this business and you say, hey, I'm not sure I'm crazy about the way this is going, there will be a brushback to that. I'm going to circle back to that as we go further into answering your question. But at the top, I'm doing all these books because now, I mean, like I said, Brigade has been well received. Bloodstrike has been well received. Prophet has been well received. There is a period from 1992 to 1994 that I am experiencing the Rumpelstiltskin, everything or Midas, everything I spin, everything I touch is turning to gold. It started on New Mutants with X-Force, with Cable, with Deadpool, with Domino, and transformed that book. So I am just riding a wave that's very organic and continuing to expand. And what kid, because I'm still a kid, and I'm like, from not knowing a single artist or person in comics in Orange County early in my career, having to drive up to LA and interact. Suddenly I have a studio where every day I walk in, there's 60 of us all making comic books under one big giant tent, and it's a blast. So that also wasn't a business plan. That's just this is super fun, okay? And I am rewarding everybody because I want them to feel like I appreciate them in a way that maybe other people in the business, you always hear people feeling like I'm not getting paid what I'm worth. Well, I'm going to take that out of the equation. I'm just going to make you feel really good about what you're doing for us. So we are producing a lot of books. There is no obligation from any of the partners to produce books. You can produce one book. Some guys dabbled, and I'll be honest, Todd had a book he was really excited about called Boof and the Bruise Crew. I think that's right. Boof and the Bruise Crew. And he thought, I am going to hit maybe that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle market. So he's trying to expand outside of Spawn. Long story short, Boof and the Bruise Crew, Boof doesn't go over as well as he'd hoped. So he shuts it down. But he tried. We all had books we put out there that maybe didn't get the same response as our best stuff. So Valentino, Eric Larson maybe had 4 books. Well, suddenly, when we leave Malibu, we have to finance our own offices. We're hiring a controller, we're hiring a publisher, we're hiring marketing, sales, production people. So how we're paying for that is a percentage of our books are going towards that collectively. So a Mark Silvestri book, a Rob Liefeld book, a Todd McFarlane, we're all paying the same per book. Yes, over time, 2 years in, I'm making 22 titles a month. Glory, Supreme, Prophet, Blood Wolf, Bad Rock and Company, Team Youngblood, Strikeful. Okay, we've got a great line of books, and what you mentioned I've shared it. It's a printout from Diamond that shows the most successful families of comics in the industry, and it was X-Men, Extreme Studio, the X-Men family, the Extreme Studios family. Spider-Man was 3rd, Batman was 4th. our percentage of the comic book pie was enormous. That is how successful we were with those titles. The publisher of Image Comics at the time, Larry Marder, came to me and said, Rob, he had heard I was going to maybe scale back. And he's like, this will subtract this much money from the company. And we actually need every penny given our overhead and everything. I'm like, okay. What I didn't do is tell those other guys to do more books. That wasn't part of the mindset. You did your own thing. And what everybody should realize, because what I've realized over time, everybody had their own different reason for doing Image Comics. Mine was never, when I hear people say it, it's like, no, I can't, that is so wrong, and you can't find anything that supports this from me. I didn't leave Image Comics because I was mad at Marvel. I had nowhere else to go. What do I do after a book that did not exist and characters that did not exist 18 months before X-Force? When those hit number one, sell 5 million copies, the second issue selling 1.8 million copies, they're making toys, they're merchandising it. I said, my window is open. What am I going to do with that window? What you don't do is go, hey, can I do another book? Can I do one of my all-time favorites? Can I do Fantastic Four like in 2 years? No. The window is open. I'm looking at all this merchandise on my wall over here, wondering if I can pull any of it off and show it, but I'm just going to keep it where it is. The thing is, I need to go and see what I can do. I've done the Deadpool Cable. I've done these characters that I have equity in, that I have part, ownership in the 90s. And now what if I owned this? What can I do with characters that I own completely? Other guys' agenda was, I'm going to show them. They did me wrong. They took me for granted. That was never my agenda. My agenda was build up a catalog, build up like a catalog of characters. I mean, eventually I had trading cards for Roman, for Brigade. I mean, we did trading card deals. We did action figure deals. This is what owning your own stuff. It's tremendously fun. It was the unknown because, as I've said again and again and again, I thought I was going to sell 100,000 copies of Youngblood. I thought not being under the Marvel banner, but my life at 100,000 would have been great. It would have been fine. It would have been better than me staying and doing X-Force for the deal that I had then. The royalties on 100,000 copies in 1993 would be huge. So yes, I build this up. Suddenly I'm told that they're dependent on the income of my books. The reason I do Maximum Press is I'm like, I feel like maybe I should have a golden parachute for myself. I feel like at this time I should have a different wing. And I inform all the partners, this is going to be for my non-superhero, and this stuff isn't going to collect it. At the launch of Maximum, it's going to be more genre. I've gotten the license to Battlestar Galactica. I'm going to do this sword and sorcery title called War Child. I'm going to do this new book about an angel called Evangeline that takes place outside of. That is my backup plan. My plan B, my golden parachute. Because I just feel when Larry comes and says this to me, and he's looking out for the collective. He's looking out for everybody, and everybody that worked at Image. They were all cool people. And, it's something you're hearing about when shows get canceled, like what's going to happen to the staff. And if you have any humanity, you're like, I want to make sure that the staff is taken care of. So I take my responsibility as my 22 books paying in, but it gets even more severe. Larry comes to me and says, you and Jim Lee are like 70% of the company. Jim does 18 books. You do 22 books. We can't afford to lose Extreme or Wildstorm. And I said, well, as much as I appreciate that, I'm not going to let that kind of pepper whether I need to pull back or not. And if I lose a book, I'm not going to necessarily replace a book. So yes, 2.5 years into Image, we've created a monster that needs fuel, okay, all the time. And I decide, you know what? I'm gonna. What we're leaving out here is Marvel comes knocking and says, guys, we'd like to talk to you. We would like our original line of books that is selling poorly. Fantastic Four, Captain America, Iron Man, Avengers. We would like to, and if your listenership needs to understand that this isn't the Avengers of 2012. The Avengers is not the best-selling brand at Marvel. X-Men is. Spider-Man is. They come to Jim and myself under the Heroes Reborn umbrella, and they want us to do this. And we investigate it, and I kind of find it exciting because now it's not 1992. I don't have to worry about my next move. I've got my own catalog. I wanted to build up a catalog that I could manage, that I could have for the rest of my life, that I could do whatever I want with. This catalog has reached the maximum amount of eyeballs, the maximum amount of readers. So, wow, what would it be like? Because I'm now approaching 30 and feeling like I'm 100 years old. Man, I may never get a chance to do Captain America or the Avengers ever again. So I've got this successful thing set up. Let's investigate this. They asked Todd to go back and do Spider. He was invited. It wasn't that they were talking to Jim. They asked the three of us. Todd declined, and then resentment definitely built up. And I didn't imagine it. It was told to my face. Jim and I were, I wouldn't say scolded, but I just don't have another word other than scolded. But in 1995, the duration of the deal, and the negotiations of it, and Jim and myself would go up to Burbank, Los Angeles, and meet with the Marvel attorneys and build out this deal to the point where it was too good to say no. And then it was like, oh my gosh, the Marvel is going to outsource their books to the West Coast. Became a giant behind the scenes panic button throughout Marvel. So now I got that stress thrown on top of me. But what I really believe now is, you know what? My comics could use a fresh coat of paint, and I'm not really comfortable with things that are being said to me in meetings, stuff I'm not going to divulge at this time. But that resentment is obvious. It's coming off like it's voices are being raised, and the idea that we would go back in business with Marvel, and why not let them reel? Why not let them fail? Okay, really funny stuff. Because I'm like, I feel like this is too personal. And again, I don't have, never did have that agenda that I was leaving to hurt Marvel. So yes, resentment forms, and I've talked about it. The panel in 1996. We are a few months out of the launch of Heroes Reborn. The books are going to press. I have a preview. I think 50 Captain America #1 with no word balloons is what I have as a preview book that I am selling at San Diego in the summer of 1996, the weekend of July 4th. My Captain America was the program book, was the T-shirt. It was the first time I'd seen them advertising San Diego Comic-Con on all the movie screens for me in Southern California. So I'd go to the AMC, I'd go to the Regal, and there's my Captain America T-shirt that for San Diego on the screen saying San Diego Comic-Con, July 4th weekend. I'm like, oh my gosh, this really tracks. At that, we did our Image Comics panel, so it's all of us together, and we were starting to get Marvel questions. And Todd cut that out very quickly, very tersely, and instructed them that if they wanted to ask Marvel questions, go to a Marvel function where Rob and Todd are and ask them. This is the place for Image Comics. And he wasn't wrong, but you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to see that he was angry and resentful, because there was a huge focus. I have all sorts of theories as to why some of this stuff was playing out. I'm not going to share those theories at this time. I was just there, and I was part of it. So then there's hostilities brewing between Mark Silvestri's Top Cow and myself. And to be honest, that is over the services of an artist named Michael Turner, who is no longer with us. Michael Turner wanted more work. He had developed a relationship with a gentleman named Matt Hawkins, who was an editor of mine. And Matt was like, hey, I was at a poker game with Mike. Hey, I was da-da-da. He would love to do something for us. Mike had agreed to do an Evangeline 3-issue miniseries. And he was not under any exclusive with Mark. But Mark and I love him to death, have the most respect. I think he's the single, I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say it 1,000 more. He is the best draftsman illustrator of my age and among the partners. I've never seen more beautiful men, women, environment, storytelling. He's the whole package. He's the best of the best. Uh, Early on, he had conversations with me, and I don't mind sharing it, because this is 30 some years ago. But both he and Jim Lee said, "You're paying your guys too much." And I said, "You don't get to make that determination." He goes, "Well, my guys are hearing what your guys are making. That's not my problem. Like, what about a million sales isn't enough to go around? Okay, I mean that's just my thinking. But everybody does not approach the business of comics the same. I have heard things in the last 2 weeks about what people are getting paid, about what this guy gets paid here and what this guy gets paid here, and this guy was told that he's not a big name, so he doesn't qualify for. I mean, it's literally like it's it's Groundhog Day. It's like it never changes. It's always the same discussions. But going back to 1992 at the launch, Mark's like, your guys are too young. They're too fresh for you to be paying them these rates. And I just said, I disagree. Going back to what I said earlier, not knowing that you were going to ask this at all, I wanted to take care of my guys. I wanted them to do very well. And success was rewarded, especially if you were suddenly doing, knocking out an entire book of lush, delicious, amazing pencils in a week, as a guy named Jeff Matsuda was, who just stormed into Extreme Studios and started doing 22 pages a week. I'm like, I have the second coming of like John Byrne. So did I pay him $700 a page? I did, because I didn't know what the book was going to sell, and I want to take care of him on the front end. And the funny thing about a guy like Jeff is suddenly he put a down payment on a house. He had a sports car, and I'm like, of course he does. This guy's doing 30 pages a week for me every week. Do the math, 1992, 1993. He's doing well for himself. He sent his envelope to me through the mail. I hired him through the mail. I flew him out. I put him up. We had a house called the Extreme House that I rented in Orange. No, I bought it and I rented it to them. Sorry. It was near the studio, near Anaheim Stadium. And it was a really cool house on a cul-de-sac. And five guys could get their own room in this 2-story house. If I flew you out, it was like, you can live here for like 3 to 4 months until you find your way. And then there's probably going to be new guys that we need to put here. But with what they were getting paid, they were doing very well. So the friction between Mark and myself, you overpay your guys, and I hear about it from my guys who aren't paid as well, I think was all playing itself out on this big stage with Mike Turner. Mike Turner was not going to come work for me other than these 3 issues. And as the story goes, Mark resigns and says Top Cow is going out on its own. And all fingers are pointed at me. So now I've got the added benefit of, as I pissed Mark off enough for him to leave. Now, before I go any further, we had this understanding that we weren't going to, quote unquote, poach each other's talent. And at the time that this Mike Turner thing went down, I was about a year into Wildstorm giving offers to my guys, Todd McFarlane Productions hiring my guys. I had guys who were under exclusives to me who were discovered to be doing work. And I just had to say, hey, buddy, you know how much I dig you, but you have an exclusive contract with me. I have to let you go. What you really want to do is do this. I don't want to keep you here. And so my Eric Stevenson, who is now publisher, and I and Matt Hawkins were like, what's going on? We're honoring these agreements, the no poaching, but everyone's taking our guys. Like, Wildstorm is offering gigs and Todd is offering them gigs. And one of my guys says, oh, when, I won't say the individual, when one of the partners was here for the meeting, because it was a Southern California meeting, because we would go around and maybe Jim would host a San Diego meeting of the partners. We'd fly to Arizona, meet with Todd. In the Orange County Extreme Studios meeting, my one, it was Matt Hawkins who told me, I saw this guy pull this guy away, and I overheard them talking about doing work. Like they were here, like recruiting on the spot. So this is stuff actually I haven't really talked about in depth, and it doesn't really bother me. It's just, it is what it is, right? So when I hear that another talent from another studio, I'm like, I'm kind of tired of all my guys, getting approached, but I'm honoring the no approach thing.
Yes.
So the Mike thing was something that I was willing to engage in. It was 3 issues. It enraged Mark. And I'm going to say something. Mark did not have the same quality of advisors and consiglieres around him at that time as he does now. Matt Hawkins has worked at Top Cow for I think the last 25 years, maybe 26. And I love Matt, and I was so happy when he landed at Top Cow with Mark, obviously because Mark is such a massive talent. But there were people with Mark at the time, and boy, this is something no one's ever heard before. I don't think I've talked about it. There was a period that right before this time, right before this goes down, maybe 9 months before, I had said, "Hey, Mark, what if we merged our interests, Top Cow and Extreme, and we go and find a financier, somebody in Hollywood to back us, or maybe at the very least do a toy deal with Mattel, some of these other big." And Mark and I met twice in person, and his consigliere would say to me, who's no longer in the business, but was, who's that dude? Oh my gosh, Wormtongue. It was Mark Silvestri's version of Wormtongue
Huh.
from Lord of the Rings. Okay, and man, this guy's like, well, look, it's clear you need this. I'm like, no, 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 no. This excites me. I think we could do a lot. We can make a lot of magic together. And I've got the Heroes Reborn thing coming. I'm I'm set. But I think Extreme and Top Cow together, we merge our interests and we go out and we try and make a big label. This is stuff that I initiated, but I'm suddenly being treated like, well, you need us, and not by Mark. Mark is very quiet. It's this poison consigliere that bent his ear and really had just a beef. And eventually, I think he told somebody, this guy, Rob Liefeld has a face that I just want to hit repeatedly, which made me laugh, and I imagine that is probably true for a lot of people. But I was like, that's funny. That's funny, and knowing that he said that and putting all this in perspective. So there was bad blood, ill will being stirred up. Mark, this all leads to Mark resigning, which then causes a whole lot of guys to be really upset. And at the same time, they're finding out that I am moving my books to Maximum Press. And then I get the angry fax. Well, back when, for people who don't understand, fax machines, wax paper coming through in real time. It was like a real time telegram. And I've shared it. I can hold it up. If I knew we were going to talk about it, I'd go get it. And it's in my files. And it's signed by Todd. And he says, "We have learned of your moving Youngblood and Supreme to Maximum Press." That had already been done. Because, like I said, suddenly I'm getting applied a lot of pressure to provide for everybody. And it was at a time when everyone was scaling back and we were expanding. At that point, I did not feel safe anymore. And I wanted to just, Image Comics for certain was not fun for me anymore. Extreme Studios was fun. Making comic books was fun. But politics is not something I'm interested in or never been very good at.
Yeah.
And so I responded to this letter because we had submitted our stuff. Like, the Image catalog is being assembled for the fall. And so this is probably late July. And they learned that Rob is moving 2 signature books into his Maximum Press catalog. And that causes a knee-jerk reaction that comes with a threat. And if you don't do this, we're going to start stripping stuff. And I basically said, well, I'm not going to unmove the books. So take that however you'd like. And Eric Stevenson, publisher now, Matt Hawkins, head of Top Cow, and Larry Martyr, who was the publisher, are all aware that I had a letter of resignation from Image Comics that Larry had kept in his drawer for about 7 months. He's like, can you not act on this? Can you not? I just wanted to be free of all of the politics, and I have never lacked for confidence. As I said, our initial mission statement to start our own creator-owned label that benefits all creators, we had fulfilled it. That had worked, and it was going to continue to work. But my catalog, my interests, I felt like I was in good shape. Now put the Marvel stuff on top of this, and this is just a stew of anger, resentment. Mark knew what he was doing. I got to tell you, Mark It was a great move. It was like in the political arena, resigning immediately upset the apple cart, put a lot of stink on me and everybody who worked with me. And Mike was like, Rob, I'm sorry. I didn't know that this would go this way. I maintained a great relationship with Mike up until his passing. Uh, Joy, my wife and I, Dan Fraga, we would go up to his place in the marina. We'd hang out. We'd watch movies, play games, go out to dinner. I thought Mike was just a lovely guy. The irony is that Mike would end up leaving Top Cow a couple of years later. Like certain he had a desire to step outside uh, in the same way that we had a desire to step outside. And just so your people know, everybody Extreme will remember. I gathered everybody into a giant meeting room. 60 people could meet in our giant meeting room. And I gathered everybody and I stood on the chair and I said, hey, everybody, just so you know, this is Camelot. What we're experiencing right now in 1993 is Camelot. This is not going to last forever. Make sure you take care of your affairs and get ready when the Grail gets lost because it's going to
Right.
get lost. I just don't know where or when. And I also said, um, I can never tell you to be loyal to me. I, from your position and what how you're looking at me right now, I'd be a giant hypocrite because you'd be like, well, you weren't loyal to Marvel. You worked for Marvel and built up this big title and you left them. And I said, so I will never ask for your loyalty. And one of the other partners told me that that's what he stresses above all is loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. That sounded very mafioso to me. And I'm like, what you should be loyal to is yourself. And everybody at Extreme will attest to that. That is how I presented myself. If you have a better deal and I can't match it, leave. We, we had people who came in and said, Rob, I've been offered the X-Men and I that's the one thing you can't offer me. You can give me all this incredible money and benefits, but I said, go with your heart, man. Have fun. And another guy's like, you don't have enough work for me here, so I've contacted Marvel, and it's true. If you're the last one in the door, and another 8 inkers each are doing X amount of work, and we're offering you like short stories, and you're like, but I want my own series, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure how I can put you ahead of these other guys. It's like sport. It's like the guy who wants to get in the game, but
Yeah.
who are you gonna get
That's
him in?
good.
So that guy eventually left. I'm on good terms with him to this day. It's just very practical and be loyal to yourself.
Right. You approach it like a sports team more so than some corporate weird asshole guy.
That's how I've always looked at it. And because I grew up with all that stuff. And look, movie stars, they're not beholden to one studio. It's like be loyal to yourself. That's what we practiced.
Hmm.
But I wanted to take care of the people that we had. And so this begins my exit from Image Comics. And when it is certain from their end that I am not going to budge and I am in fact leaving. And again, no, all of this is vetted. Grab Eric Stevenson, grab Matt Hawkins. Eric doesn't work for me and hasn't worked for me for, you know, 27, 28 years. If anything, I work for him now. He's the publisher in Image Comics. He's an owner. Matt Hawkins works for Top Cow. Larry Martyr is really out of the business. They're all going to tell you the same thing. Rob was looking to leave for a year. He was looking, and then when it came time to leave, and the threats of "we're going to punish you," and then as I said, other people were being dispatched. They flew out. Hey, Rob, can we take you to lunch? Take you to dinner? Gareb Shamus of Wizard Magic magazine, who I did not have a good relationship to begin with, but he's like, "Let me tell you something, Rob. If you leave Image, you're going to lose all the benefits. There's lots of people who aren't going to like you anymore, and they're not going to be your friend." And I'm like, "Hey, thanks for the advice. Take care." Like this, I just at no point do I ever wish that I had gone back and made a different decision. That time was done because what was important to me was building a catalog. I built a catalog. I built a catalog. And you know what? When you build something and you own it, you can sell it, whether that's a good idea or not, but it's yours to sell. You can buy it back. You can get it optioned. the great benefit of what I started in 1992 is when I go and I meet with all the different companies that I'm meeting with this last year, production companies, game companies, toy companies, and I'm able to make a Blood Wolf figure, a Blood Strike figure, because I own them. Okay, and when a company comes to me and says we'd like to dip our toe into this, Cabot Blood Strike 1993. I gave this
Nice.
to Robert Kirkman, to Eric Stevenson, and they're like, Rob, these are some of the best made figures ever. The guys
Yeah,
at Loot
that's
Collector
really nice.
crushed on these different arms, different faces, different guns. I made him he appears in Youngblood #3. Okay, 1992. Toys are getting made. They were concerned. They sold them all out. They had to get a letter from me to let them go back and make more because they sold out of these action figures. And you're like, there is no Bloodstrike movie yet, cartoon yet, game yet, but I own it and I'm able to control that destiny. And that is a result of what I started. I didn't get into Image Comics to make money. I didn't get Image Comics to look at spreadsheets. I got into Image Comics to make fun worlds and characters. And by 1995, 96, and here's the last element, I guess, that we need to introduce. Maximum Press, this little indulgent label, was paying all my bills. Suddenly, Evangeline was our best-selling book, and it wasn't even close. Evangeline is outselling Youngblood, Supreme, Prophet. I was the last one into the warrior woman or the hot girl phase, and I thought, well, we're going to suffer from being behind Vampirilla, Lady Rawhide, She, Witchblade, Lady Death. We're gonna suffer. We're gonna have to run it. No. We jumped right to the head of the line, and Evangeline suddenly is our biggest selling book, hundreds of thousands of units, and paying all of the Extreme Studios bills. Like everything else was gravy. Evangeline had done crazy great. Battlestar Galactica. I think I bought the license for $3,000 and Universal Studios said, "Are
Wow.
you sure you want this?"
Hmm.
Like nobody wants this. I'm like, "It's my favorite it's my favorite show of my childhood. I have to have this. What am I paying you?" And they're
Hmm.
like, "Well, some royalties, but 3,000." They then came to me after our 3 years was done and said, "Rob, you've done such a good job. We now have multiple bidders for this and we're doing an action figure line and the price is substantially more." And I said, I told every story I wanted to tell. I was actually having trouble.
I mean, they had a TV show made too. I mean, that's
I
cool.
mean, they had the TV show, I think 2003,
Yeah.
but we,
It's probably from what you did. I mean,
well, they told me, they said, Rob, you turned the lights on. You gave a greater, this is the Universal people saying, Rob, like nobody was asking for Battlestar Galactica and now it's back. It's a thing. So the Maximum Press label was doing very, very well for me. And so putting books into, from the Image label to Maximum Press is me trying to do better with my books. And I did not expect it to be met with the fury that it was met with. And it was met with fury. And there is all of this stuff is tracked. I've got the letters, the back and forth. And you know, when I formally resigned, one partner stood up. So here's Image Comics had a law firm that we employed from people that I hired myself, but they didn't serve me. The minute they took the job, they served the rest of them. They were located in Irvine, in a big, giant, glossy building in Irvine, California. I drove to the building, and I'm pretty sure there was another law firm in the building, and there was. And I went up and I asked to meet with this guy and this gigantic. I thought he was a bodybuilder, not an attorney. He sits down. I tell him my story. He goes, I know. And he says the name of the attorney that represents Image Comics. He goes, I'd love to go up against him. They're just one floor below us. I said, great. I want all this being handled in one building. So this is terrific. So there is one day during this that the partners are on a different floor than I am, and the attorneys are going up and down in elevators meeting. And this is why this stuff is shit. It would be great television. But the thing is, they told my new attorney, one of the partners stood up and said, we are never going to let him leave. That's way too easy. We're not going to make it easy on Rob. And the guy goes, because it really is easy. It's a really easy send off. Since we've gone this far, I'll tell you the end of the story. We then, they then inform me that they're going to hold all my money. And we're hearing stuff like that right now, like how Diamond's holding other publishers' money. Uh, I had, I think, Bad Rock Wolverine was my first Marvel Extreme crossover, and that had generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. We didn't. We made it. We made it a prestige format book, like Dark Knight format, and so it had a higher price tag. These funds are coming in, and when I'm about to get paid out on them, Larry Martyr, God bless him, very nervous, very Rob. I'm sitting there at my drawing table. I am drawing Captain America, and I am told, Rob, we're not releasing the funds. We're holding your funds
Dang.
until, and I'm like, oh, so now I'm getting sweated out. That is 1000% a fact that suddenly, so now we're in counter lawsuits. I want my money frozen up. They want things to be handled in the way that they want them to be handled. Here's where faith comes into it. At one point, my wife, upon hearing all of this, I'm in the kitchen and she says, "Why are you laughing? This seems really like upsetting." And I said, "Joy, I said, just relax. It's going to work itself out. It's going to be fine. There's just a lot of smoke screens here. There's a lot of blurring of what's at hand, and all we have to do is get at hand, and we'll solve this." Well, a meeting is called. Apparently, the partners have given their proxy to Jim Lee. Jim Lee is going to speak for all of them. I have to go to La Jolla. I have to meet with Jim, the image attorney. Jim is also having his own attorney who's in La Jolla, and Larry Martyr will be there. Myself and my sister, who had been doing business, had been working at Extreme in a business capacity. We take the drive down there. We go to the La Jolla offices. Jim says, "So here's the situation. This is your position against us. This is our position against you." He says, "Here's what my solution is. You have a bill to the printer outstanding on some of these books that needs to be paid. We can call Gabe. Gabe is no longer with us. Gabe was the representative at the printer. He said, you can call Gabe right now and you can confirm that you're going to take care of that bill. And then our business is done." Oh, I forgot that he had Larry and all the attorneys leave the room. So now it's Jim Lee, myself, and my sister. And I said, "Are you serious? What's going on here?" And Jim's like, "No, this needs to be resolved, and this is the best." And I'm like, "So it's going to be as simple as it always should be?" Like, he's like, "Whatever money that we're holding for you, that you have any debt to the company, we're going to take that out of that. You're going to pay this bill. We're going to go our separate ways. No more lawsuits." And Alex, I'm like, "What's going on here? This is incredible. This is, we're both going to be able to put this behind." You really stumbled into something today. I have never told this story in this way, this well. So then Jim calls people back in. My attorney, his attorney, the image attorney, and Larry Martyr. I will not tell you which one said, "This is not what the partners agreed to." And Jim Lee, in as firm a way as he ever said, leaned in and said, "I have proxy. This is what we're doing." It was firm. It was to the point. I'm going to unveil. I'm going to get to the behind of that. So have you ever been in a situation where you're like, "Okay, this isn't supposed to be going as well for me as it's going. How do I get out of here as fast as I can?" Some docs were drawn up. Some signatures were laid down. I couldn't have run to the car fast enough with my sister. And I'm like, "What in the hell just happened? It's over." Another person said, "I'm not sure how the others are going to receive this. This won't be going well with the rest of them." Jim stood firm. I get a call. I won't tell you who's on the other end of that call. Mysterious benefactor says, "Hey, how'd you like how that went?" And I'm like, are you aware? He goes, oh yeah. He said, Jim is shopping Wildstorm and he can't have a lawsuit on the books. And his entire intention today was to get this off because some people who are interested in him say, you have a lawsuit against you. Now, I do know that Jim said to me, to my face, and I believe he's aware of this. And there is, Alex, there is no hard feelings. I have the, my career has been kick ass. I love it. I
Yeah.
love all of the hurdles. Okay. Uh, Jim, when Marvel went into bankruptcy and they said, we have to, because you and Jim are contracted at a certain level, we have to inform you ahead of time. So I knew 48 hours before the world news because I was contacted by the president who said it's my obligation. And I just said, I got a phone. This is also the day before Christmas. And Joy goes, what was that? I go, Marvel's filing bankruptcy. I was like, let's get back to Christmas. Like, it was like, kind of the worst case scenario that's going to happen is going to happen. And Marvel had already flown out and met with us in this tumultuous period. But they said, if you don't take the reduced deal, Jim has already said he will take the reduced deal. This is something I've said on my podcast ad nauseum. And it was basically like, if you don't take the 50% cut or whatever, Jim's already told us he'll take it. Well, that's not going to convince me. And once again, I told my Captain America story. It had a beginning, it had a middle, it had an end. I had some fun other stories, but my saga, my rebirth of Cap and bringing him into the modern day and how I wanted to establish it, I had done. In the Avengers, I had fun through 6, 7 issues, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Jim told me, he called me. So this is a couple of weeks, this is about 2 months after the Image thing is wrapped.
Yeah.
And Jim said, hey, Rob, if you hadn't sued me, I wouldn't have taken these terms, but you sued me. And I'm like, you were holding my money as an Image partner. Like, let's not leave that part out of it. Okay.
Yes.
So, but I get it. Okay. Honor among thieves, whatever was going on. I got it. He stated it, to my face and I understood, but it was kind of like, I didn't feel it's like reading James Gunn the other day. I didn't feel bad about joining DC. Somebody said, do you feel bad that you're now a DC guy? He goes, no, they fired me. Like, we all, have a motivation, have something we cling to. And so I appreciate that Jim was up front. Like, if you hadn't screwed me, I wouldn't have taken this position that lessened your position. But I'm like, Jim, that's fine. I'm moving on. I would then enter my next dance with Marvel phase over the Fighting American imbroglio, which we've spelled out several times on my show. But so that resolution of Image Comics, that was just leading with faith. This is going to work out. I'm not worried. The industry was already changing. We had the boom of 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. It's now 96. And what was happening at all the big companies was the time for young talent to be explored with oohs and ahs and who's the next guy was being replaced by what established names are you bringing to the table? Jim and I are two of those established names. We're bringing Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee to restore the earliest. Okay, we've got Mark Waid and Alex Ross doing Kingdom Come. We've got Alan Moore doing. Yeah, it was suddenly people didn't want to gamble; they wanted sure things. So we were entering the phase of sure things, and my studio had thrived on young talent, but the industry was changing. It's just like anything in Hollywood, you read after 3 years, the horror boom is now turned into the horror bust.
Yeah.
Like, appetite has run its course. Things run their course. You have to, adjust the plan. So we were already looking to scale back because the industry was no longer being receptive, and not just to my studio, to every company. But that resolution in La Jolla, and I could, if Jim stood his ground as firmly with the partners as he did with the people who were quite literally losing their shit in front of me, I had to get past these people to my car to go home. It was over. We weren't in a pissing match anymore. Because there was no there.
Right.
And no matter what, I've heard some crazy theories. I was there. this is what happened. And you know, what occurred after that, and the chase to run Marvel Comics, uh, that I had nothing to do with, but would kind of take shape in the back half of Heroes Reborn, and how Marvel would look on the other side of the bankruptcy. Um, you know, what happened is a year later, Jim is selling Wildstorm. So what I was told in that car was, nothing just happens like this. There was already stuff,
Yeah.
groundwork being laid.
There's like other dominoes falling at the same time.
And in full disclosure, Jim and I shared an agency. We were both represented by CAA at the time. And there was one time his agent called me, our shared agent called me about business, an agent, I should say, an agent called me, and I said, you shouldn't be telling me this stuff. You're, Jim has his own company. I have my own company. You shouldn't be telling me this. I don't have anything to do with that, and you should call Jim about that. Well, I'm really concerned. Okay, that's not my concern. So, but Jim, if Jim isn't shopping his company, he doesn't shut down the deal. And I don't know what, I've never known, I've never asked what that looked like, but I don't believe that it differed from the emotions that were pouring out right in front of me. This isn't what they agreed to. This is not going to go down well with the other, you know, they're going to be furious. I'm proxy. I was made proxy. That Jim, very firm, that don't F with me energy, right? So that is the I just gave you the saga. I gave that is the saga.
It's
And you know what?
incredible.
Here's the deal, Alex. People tried to allow that to define me, you know? And again, when you go to faith, you go, I am not going to let this define me. And I believe this is nothing more than like a bump in a career. And what I did learn over time, because I've been called several times. Hey, Rob, you've put up with some crap. How would you handle this? I've got decades of this. The 2000s, I've gotten a lot of calls. How did you cope? How did you? Well, it was never really in my hands to begin with. What I needed to wake up every day and do was to apply myself as best I could, uh, and to fulfill my end of the bargain. Work hard, and don't have idle hands. Keep them busy. Keep working. Uh, and there's something you said about an hour ago, and it was the one element that we didn't put in here is my love of comics is somebody else's love of their favorite sports team, their favorite actor, movie franchise. Look, man, and we've all seen it because we've all seen how the people who don't understand why we're so into comics look at us. I've had that my whole life. Like, wow, that guy really, woo, whatever's happening in that comic book, what's going on? I now have adult friends who are like, you still read those things? I'm like, yes. What? You're a grown man. I am. I will be reading comic books until I croak, if that's tomorrow or 80 or whenever. But I love comics. There's magic in these pages. They are an American art form. They are unique to we do them, I think, over the course of history. We do them really, really spectacularly well. I mean, there are certainly masters of the craft, European masters of comic books, and Asian, the Chinese market, the Japanese market, the Korean market. I mean, they have done amazing things with their formats, things that we could frankly learn from. But I love comic books. Everything else is gravy. Everything else, but if you're going to make action figures, I'd like to be the guy that can shape that contract. If you're going to call me and say, "Hey, we'd like to make this a movie," guess what? You know what? I won't be ghosted at my own premiere when I own the project. Um, there are all sorts of upside to taking this the distance. But if you're asking me if I feel like I've had a blessed career, 1,000%. And for some reason, I'm controversial. I always read about this controversial guy.
That really shouldn't be that way. And I don't think there's anything controversial about it. I think you just brought something fresh, new, exciting. A lot of people just tried to copy it and then whatever, and that makes waves. But also, you're the first generation X guy, and some of the older guys, They're just like, who's this young guy? No, it's too bad. This is the new wave, and there's going to be a person that's going to do that, and that should be treated with love in my eyes.
And you know what? I'm just fortunate that I still get to do this. That the market exists, that, I go to Arizona. Uh, it's a couple days before we're leaving on our vacation, and there's a guy named Bill Ponsetti. He has a great store in called Fantastic Worlds Comics. I asked him if he'll host me. I'm going to bring my Youngblood book there. And so here's the peek behind the curtain of every comic creator. You don't ever go to a signing thinking there's going to be a ton of people there. You think, I need to be brave in the face that maybe very likely nobody shows up. And so those are the skills that you have to get ready. It's going to be a long day. If there's 10 people, you need to be as good to those 10 people as you possibly can and be thankful that they show up. But no one goes, oh, yeah, man, I'm going to the comic store and I'm going to all of my adorn. No, we went and saw an act in Newport Beach. The Hyatt has like 8 weeks of musical acts, and it bothered him that the front row was not sold out to the point where he said, I can't do this anymore. I've already done 5 songs. I can't keep these 5 empty seats bother me. Somebody come down here and take them. It's late enough. We're giving these seats. Come down. And he wanted them filled. It's a musician, guy with number one hits. And you go, you know, it it bothered him. He wanted those seats filled. You never take the stage thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to go out there to, I've also had musicians who call out, you're late. This entire section's been empty and you and your friends are late. And it's a bunch of very alcohol induced people stumbling down the stairs, but they were having a good time somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I go to this comic store in Arizona last weekend of May, and I didn't know that there was a giant Phoenix Comic Con the next week. It was the only date that he had available because I couldn't do before or after Free Comic Book Day. So this is a very negotiated, like, this is the window that works for him, the window that works for me. Oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a convention the week after because that sometimes affects things. I got on that plane. I signed for 6.5 hours. I think it was 400 people. The store said this is the biggest turnout we've had. And he just said he had some really big names in the last couple of years. And I was just like, I'm so honored. And why I'm telling you this is I am now getting fathers and sons and daughters and entire families.
Oh, absolutely.
And, they're introducing their family to a passion, characters, creators that are very important to them. I have people repeatedly tell me how much Youngblood means to them, the Extreme Studios titles. Will we be seeing more of these characters? And you go, wow, like that is when you never are more grateful than at that point because it's just shy of miraculous.
The
Fan
love is there,
bases. Yeah.
and something that is like my son this morning. Having to interview Rob Liefeld today, his eyes brighten up. Huh? Really? And it's a beautiful thing. And I want to put out that when you and Jim Lee did the Heroes Reborn stuff, first that stuff outsold the stuff before and the stuff after, so that should be put out there. Also, there's something about the sleeper Captain America.
Yeah,
They reused that for Winter Soldier. So
they did.
there's very much a legacy to be proud of. And you transition to awesome comics, right? There's Supreme with Alan Moore.
Right.
Eventually, also working with Joe Simon from a licensing perspective on
Yeah.
Fighting American. And you create a whole new brand, Awesome Comics. And from my perspective, if I'm thinking about this right, the Supreme by Alan Moore is very much a commentary on Mort Weisinger's Superman. And Joe Simon's Fighting American, when you were doing that, was very much a commentary not on modern Captain America, but really the patriotic hero of the era of those creators from those days.
Yes.
What was your mission with Awesome Comics, and how would you compare working with Alan Moore versus Joe Simon? I mean, you're a legend working with other legends.
Now that I do YouTube, I didn't realize how fun the comment section is. And there is always just a ton of really positive, just effusive energy coming at me in those comments. But occasionally you get a guy who's like, I quoted Robert Kirkman in a recent interview saying, Writing's not that hard. And he's talking to artists, not to the general guy. The artist that draws the comics that's used to it, he's basically saying, you should try writing your own comic as well as drawing it. That's what he's saying. Well, I say this. This guy goes in there and says, you guys weren't saying that when you begged Alan Moore to come and write for you and hang your hats on. And I'm like, okay. So let's just course correct. And this is when you go, what is going on? But in the 90s, the giant juggernaut that was Alan Moore, Swamp Thing, Watchmen, V for Vendetta, had that was over. He wasn't writing anything for anybody. I think he felt betrayed by DC, so he wasn't working with them. But he had just kind of vanished. Now, he'd end the From Hell stuff that he was doing in the late 90s. It's like, whoa, oh my God, Alan is all the way back. Alan called us. Hey, you got any work? And I'm like, is this Alan? Like, Eric Stevenson's like, Rob, it's really Alan Moore. And we didn't have any work for him. And he's like, I'm writing this Violator book. I'm not going to do my full Alan Moore. I don't have the voice for it today. He just said, I'm writing this Violator book for Todd McFarlane because, Todd figured this would be fun. So he's coming back writing Violator with Bart Sears. It's fun. It's a monster book, but we are not in any way, shape, or forms making any qualms about the fact that this is Watchmen level, an attempt for him to regain this critical form.
Yeah.
He's just wanting to have fun. And he's like, well, maybe Violator could fight one of your heroes. And we're like, okay, take your pick. I like this Badrock fella. Okay. Eric and I are like, it's Alan Moore on the phone. We're not going to tell him what to do. We would just say, yes, Alan. If Alan said, I want to come by tomorrow and paint the office, we'd be like, we'll have all the paint for you. Like it was just, then when he's doing Violator versus Badrock, yes, everybody, Alan Moore wrote Violator versus Badrock, and we didn't put a gun to his head. We didn't bribe him. He's just like, this could be fun. And we had a brand new artist named Brian Denham, and he enjoyed working with them, and they had their own separate discussions. And then I'm having these kind of long, funny talks with Alan. It's really just cracks me up. He's funnier than anybody is aware. Very wry sense of humor. But he then calls Eric Stevenson and says, would you mind if I take a crack at Supreme? Would you mind if I take a crack? Yeah. We had just hired new people and we had to fire them. We're like, we'll find you other work. I'm not laughing because we felt really bad and we made sure that those people had another 6 months of work on other books rather than their Supreme arc that they had been hired, that they had pitched us. Because you move everything out of the way if Alan Moore calls, okay?
Yeah.
And if Michael Jordan calls you in 1996 and says, I'm going to play for your team, you're like, who are we trading and how do we get him? So you're just, we're now in the Alan Moore business. And he starts writing Supreme, and it's super ridiculously genius level meta. It's packed with commentary, with fun, with love. And it suddenly becomes a critical darling. And I think he wins a couple different. I'm not sure if they're Eisner, if they're Eagle Awards, but he starts winning the awards. And people like Mark Waid, who did not like me because I was replacing him on Captain America, were like full throated. If you're not, I think it was the Comic Book Buyer's Guide. He made some comment. He said, if you're not reading Alan Moore's Supreme, you're missing out. It's the best comic on the stands. And I'm like, okay, that's how impactful what Alan is doing. And then Alan said, I'll take a crack at this. Now, the only time I asked Alan, could you do a giant, huge cosmic crossover? Is that in your wheelhouse? And he called me back and he basically wanted to do a political statement on the OJ trial. And I gave him a name. I gave him Judgment Day, like Earth's Final Judgment, and he made it a very personal little story about a murder mystery. So be careful what you wish for. It's, when we asked him to do something, he made it uniquely what he wanted to do. But it was I think everybody, Jeff Loeb, myself, Eric Stevenson, we would compete to see who got to talk to Alan the longest. And Alan, I mean, like I said, he'd walk out of Pulp Fiction. He'd want to talk about Pulp Fiction for 2 hours. And what was Quentin Tarantino going to do next? And I mean, the guy just was so much fun. But he, on Super Supreme Year 3, he said, I want you to hire my neighbor. And I said, I'm not going to hire your neighbor because also, and I've tried to explain this to people, he is now about to go do this ABC book line of books with Wildstorm, which is a great line of books, and we were excited. But Steve Moore eventually made his way onto all those books. Alan was very serious about working with him, but he's like, Rob, he's my neighbor, but he's a genius. And he taught me everything I knew is basically the pitch. And I'm like, if I suddenly announce that Supreme is no longer being written by Alan Moore, but by Steve Moore, who no one's ever heard of before at this point, the American audience didn't. I said, then I look like the idiot. It looks like we lost. It it was not going to go well in any way, shape, or form. It was better to just do the last Alan Moore stories and shut it down. Because then I'm explaining to everyone all the time. Suddenly we're explaining Supreme to everyone. Why isn't Alan doing it? Oh, so he made those priority. It was just best. Sometimes you just got to know when to end it. Joe Simon, completely different animal. Uh, I think he was 80 and the smartest, uh, most cunning, most competitive dude you'll ever meet. And oh my gosh, I learned so much from him in a short period of time. And, it's still, I don't believe, the easiest thing possible to get the Simons and the Kirbys to work together. But Roz Kirby gave it her blessing while she was still alive. But Joe had the proxy. Let's stick with that to represent the entire property. And I mean, I've got all manner of Joe Simon comics and toys that he would scribble these wonderful messages to me. Rob, I loved doing business with you. This is the greatest fighting American. I'm so glad we were able to bring him back and da da da. And when Marvel decided to sue me over fighting American, and so again, when I was starting to write and draw Captain America, I was on the phone with Dan Jurgens right when I was starting it, and Dan had just drawn Captain America as part of the DC versus Marvel storyline that they had been doing. And Dan said, Rob, there's something special about drawing Captain America, and you're going to feel it on the page when you draw him. I'm so happy for you. You're going to have a great experience. I said, oh, wow, Dan, I'm feeling it now. I definitely know what you're saying. I was done with Captain America when the bankruptcy came up with Marvel. But what I also didn't realize was how much I loved drawing a patriotic character. And I really found that to be rewarding. And I think the work that I did on those books, here's a funny thing I realized the other day. Sometimes you go, oh, I don't have a single page in my Captain America run. 6 issues, they all sold. They're gone. They're done. People bought them. They're in people's collections. The Fighting American stuff is now also gone, was gone actually back then before 2000 in the 90s. I think I put some of my best work on those pages. And I did some sketches and worked it out. And I felt like this would be a fun bridge because while I don't need to do Captain America anymore, patriotic characters are cool. I had never drawn a character with the flag, with the red, white, and blue motif, none of it. And I did really respond. And so now I'm following my artistic muse, and Joe Simon allowed that to go forward. He then defended us when Marvel, in their filing, because they literally said, we thought we were going to get the TRO, the temporary restraining order against you. I've said that, I've talked about this. We have Fighting American. It's coming out. Now, there's about 15 to 20 witnesses of this. All the names I've already shared with you. Now add Jeff Loeb, and I had a financial partner in now Awesome Comics. He's there. We get served at 6 p.m. our time. They were obligated to send it, and they sent it at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that they were seeking a temporary restraining order the following morning in New York City. It was basically good luck defending. We scrambled and asked Matt Hawkins about this. He will vet this. He is at Awesome Comics with us. We put him on a plane. We put him on the red eye. My partner in Awesome Comics, a gentleman named John Hyde, had an attorney in New York City and said, here's what we need you to do. We need you to show up and oppose Marvel's hearing tomorrow. We need opposing counsel to argue why the judge should not grant the temporary restraining order that will prevent us from making these comics. Matt Hawkins jumped off the plane, got to the courthouse, met with the attorney, and he said, Rob, the Marvel attorney came in, some dude they hired. He said he had a donut in his mouth and his briefcase, and he looked over to see people at the opposing table and was like, what the hell? And they said, we didn't think you guys were going to show up. We thought this was a slam dunk. Had I been granted a temporary restraining order, had Marvel been granted a temporary restraining order preventing me, I'm now looking at 3 months, 6 months to unwind that, if I can unwind it. In their complaint, because it says that Rob Liefeld, I have the complaint. I have their complaint. It states Rob Liefeld is attempting to fraudulently draft off the success of Captain America with his creation, fighting American. Now, you and I both know a judge is going to go, this looks like Captain America. How dare that asshole? Here's your restraining order. He didn't know, as our attorney said, Judge, Marvel published Fighting American in a really handsome hardcover collection 10 years ago. Judge, not only did Rob Liefeld not create them, Marvel published this character that they are now saying we cannot publish because they no longer have the license.
And it's an independent property too.
That's correct. But Marvel, I'm not saying it was the Marvel staff, but this attorney, whoever they handed, thought they're not going to show up. I'm going to present my facts, which are completely misleading, and it is written as if Rob Liefeld creating Fighting American and he is ripping off.
Right.
So now the judge says, well, boys, we're going to have a hearing on this. I do not grant your temporary restraining order, and I'm going to have another hearing. And I'm going to tell you, I've never gone, you've never seen Eric Stevenson, Matt Hawkins, Jeff Loeb, Joy Liefeld, Rob Liefeld, everybody who worked at the office. We had an offices in Century City. And man, Jeff Loeb came to play. He was part of it. We put together a notebook, a thick notebook of not only patriotic characters, but characters who had shields. And every patriotic character from the 30s, every patriotic character that DC had published, that Marvel had published, that had been independently published. And look, long story short, we won the case. Marvel threw in there, we don't want him to throw the shield. Well, he wasn't throwing the shield, but if that's what you're going to do to call yourself so, at the time, Wizard Magazine said Marvel wins right to prevent Rob Liefeld from throwing Fighting American a shield. How about Fighting American did not have a shield prior to this? Okay. I'm giving him a shield and was able to give him a shield. And to quote Jeff Loeb, we don't need to throw it. We'll have him fire missiles out of it. And I'm like, that's right. That's right. So but this gives you an idea of
their games.
I had become everybody's, literally, I had a big giant target on me. And there was the most shrapnel I would take was for 96. No, it would be 90. Yeah, no, 96 through about 2000. And we see it now in all different arenas, whether it's entertainment, politics, sports. What they really want is just to discourage you and to just make what you're doing so miserable that you just give up. And you go, this isn't worth it anymore. When Gareb Shamus flies out to say people aren't going to like you anymore if you leave Image Comics, I'm good with that. You know who likes me? My family. I'm good. And you know what? None of those partners in Image Comics were responsible for any of my success. They didn't draw and write New Mutants or X-Force or Youngblood, and I'm just going to do my thing. Certainly I was an embattled guy, but I'd like to think that it only reaffirmed that I'm pretty good at what I do, and I can keep doing it as long as I get up every day and I apply myself and I honor the talents that I've been given and pursue it with some pretty pure intent. The The quiet thing is I'm pretty boring. I'm not, every move I make seems to garner clicks because we live in a click world now. And, I now have people taping my live streams to see if I'm going to screw up and say something in a live stream. You know,
It's crazy out there. I'm
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah. I
crazy.
mean, that I'm meeting with Margot Robbie and Olivia Wilde as they are, I have been told that they want to make Evangeline into a movie. Okay. Well, I go, well, I should probably hear from them. And so we meet, and I immediately begin to apologize. I'm so sorry for this Evangeline book. It's of a different time. The imagery, the overt sexuality. It's what Rob, stop. We love this. This is super fun. We love the 90s. I can tell you right now, the movie is set in the 90s.
That's so smart.
They were insistent on it. They were insistent, and they're like, "No, Rob, we dig this. We dig the aesthetic. We dig the time, and nothing about any of these books that you've shown us and all the different art and artists. We think it's cool." And then Olivia Wilde showed me her lookbook, what they make up about how to visualize it. Um, they said, "Rob, we would like for you to talk to Tony McNamara." And I said, "Are we talking about Oscar nominated, like, Poor Things, Tony McNamara, the favorite Tony McNamara?" And they're like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" And they're like, "Yes." And we need to get on, you need to talk to him like in the next week. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to this very acclaimed, celebrated screenwriter who doesn't know what to make of it and tells me at the end, "I was thinking of turning this down, but I'm really into this. I am very compelled." And lo and behold, Tony came on board. This is all the reason why I'm able to be a part and shape Evangeline, because I took a leap. I took a leap of
Yeah.
faith and says I can do better for myself than what's going on at Marvel. X Force was an incredible success. I should probably use that success to explore other opportunities, which I did. And whether it's this action figure of Cabot or this, you know, like I said, I read the screenplay to Evangeline and I was giddy. And the fact that Tony, you know, wrote it as spectacular. I mean, he really attacked that script. It's great. But these are all fruits of the labors, and like they said, stop apologizing for this stuff. Like, because I kept going, like, I'm really like sorry that Evangeline, maybe it's a little lame.
No.
And they're like, "No, stop." Like they're, but you suddenly, and they were very sweet, very kind, and obviously very serious because we have moved forward on this, beyond obviously that meeting 2.5, 3 years ago. And, so you just do your thing, do it unapologetically, keep your nose to the grindstone. I say it at the end of every show. Don't be discouraged. Take some time off, reboot, reattack. Um, what's for certain is that if you do nothing, nothing will happen. Okay? If you do nothing, nothing will happen. You have to attempt to put your creative energies forward. Thinking about it isn't going to accomplish anything for anybody.
Yeah.
So as next year I'll be going in my 41st year, and like I said, I'm watching people who I've loved, and their the books that they've, the magic they created, whether it was Neil Adams or Jim Shooter or George Perez. I've watched them pass on. Uh, I'm even more, you know, protective in my mind of the living, the guys of that age of comics that are still around.
Oh, for sure.
But and also me and my peers. I mean, the Gen Xers, we're old guys now. I'm old man Liefeld. I'll be 58 in 2 months, and that's not old, but it's also not young. And you realize, what do I want to still accomplish? And I'm just grateful that this comic book business exists. And look, I'm gonna tell you, I'll wrap it with when I knew I was leaving Deadpool a year ago at the Deadpool Wolverine premiere, And as I said to my own audience recently, I and I told my wife, if I tell this story, it's going to define me. The negative components of this will be the stuff that people throw at me. I have been told for a year, and I know it's the easiest thing they throw at me, so they throw it at me constantly, and it does not bother me. Here's one thing you're not going to find me arguing with anyone on social media. It's an ignore and move on. You're just crying because they didn't invite you to a party is the complete missed.
That pisses me off because that's not the.
They missed the message. The guy that brought the guy with whom out this character does not exist. This beautiful Scotty Young Deadpool pin.
Mhm.
Uh, and as I've said, if I'm not born, if the Terminator kills me, whatever, without me, there's no Deadpool, there's no name, no origin, no vocation, no powers, any of it. They did not speak to any of us. And what I was like, they did not. I was not spoken to. Not even a handshake. No, they didn't give you a handshake. No, no. It's just called people. There are certain, even if you can't stand somebody, you shake their hand. You go, hey, hey, what's up? How you doing? Especially if you're about to take that property all the way back to the bank in a way bigger than ever before. And I got in the limo as we were going back to the hotel. I said, oh, I just don't think emotionally, I just don't think I can go. And my wife said, finish Deadpool team up. You're almost done with the third issue. Two more. You'll have it collected the rest of your life. You've had such a good time. Don't let this get you down. And she was great counsel. And I finished it. But the entire time I was just counting the days. And there were people. And I have a friend who's done a lot of great things in this business. And this is a common thread. When he left Marvel at his peak, there was someone from Marvel who came up to him and said, we're very concerned for you. We don't know how you're going to make it going forward. The idea that you cannot break out, from your success with the big two is the lie they want to feed you to keep you there. Oh my gosh, what if I step out? Because look what happened when we stepped out. And I could not shed, just get out of Marvel, had a good time. It was a fun 10 years. I did everything I wanted. I got a lot of collected editions. I will get paid the rest of my life on all manner of Deadpool things. I've said it again. Please buy Deadpool Batman. Please buy lots of them.
Yeah, totally.
Please buy all the Deadpool product. I made the decision. I will no longer work there. Life's too short. I don't even know if I'll be making comics in 4 years from now if my eyes and hands don't cooperate. That's the big part. and some of the people that we really adore who are passing away are doing so younger than you would expect. Um, well, again, Jim Shooter wasn't an old man. He wasn't. I mean, he wasn't a young man. He wasn't really an old man either. You know, my father-in-law is very spry. He's 83 years old. I think the eight in the name in the number that eight number is a hard one to justify as anything other than older. But
Mhm.
while I'm here, I'm going to finish it on my terms. I'm going to revisit all these characters that I love, that I created back then. It's why I created this catalog. I can open the trunk up any day I want and grab them and start interacting with them all over again. And so it's really fun. We got a lot of great stuff going on this year. But no, the history of comics. I'm so glad you asked these questions because I'm able to share just these. I painted for you the word pictures of how the events played out for me
You did.
in real time today, and I hope that it. If here's the thing, there's no agenda. God bless Jim, everybody else. This is 30 years ago, but it was fun and it was funny. But at no time was I got, oh my gosh, my wife, she was young and very much like, I don't understand. And she was very concerned. I said, don't be concerned. This is going to work itself out because I just, I think the underlying theme of our talk today is there's a lot of competition in comics. It's masked with lots of smiles, but if I just told you what I knew went on this week, like the knives have never been sharper, the pie has never been more precious, and what some of this has uncovered is some of the ruthless, aspects of the competitive nature of the comic book business. And one of the best ways to beat your competition sometimes is to take that competition out. Okay. And that is pretty much everyone's preferred. Like, well, what if they just don't take the court and I didn't have to play that game? I got the accolades, the award, the title, moving on. Okay. But there's a fight in everybody. That scenario is not one that's likely to play out ever. You're going to have to compete. And so this business is very competitive. And so we glimpsed some of that today with your very insightful questions.
Marvel goes bankrupt in 97. That creates a whole cascade of creator
Right.
IP issues. And I think with these corporate turnovers, there's renegotiations on royalties. Like Deadpool Cable, I
Yeah.
think there's renegotiations because it's a new company. At the same time, you return to these characters, you return to that love for the
Right.
character. And then you see these characters spiral into the movies and seeing
Right.
the rise of Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. And frankly, you should get a Disney Legends Award for making
Oh,
the MCU fun
oh,
again
man.
because
Okay.
it was struggling there. Then Deadpool Wolverine comes out, and that's you should get a Disney Legends
So,
Award just
so
for making the MCU and Kevin Feige, more
Feige.
relevant
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that stuff. Tell us about that and glowing in it.
Here's the deal. Here's the funny part is I actually on an upcoming episode that I already taped, I go very deep into because it's a year later. Deadpool Wolverine was the movie they didn't want to make. It wasn't part of the schedule. It wasn't part of the phase, as they call them. It wasn't the success of all that had come before leading up to Endgame, I think really affected the hubris of the company to what they thought they could achieve post Endgame. But I am reminded by an editor who told me back early on in my career, they had canceled a book, uh, and I was fairly indifferent to this particular book being canceled. I'd had plenty of books I loved in my lifetime be canceled. But he's like, the problem with canceling a story and canceling characters is people are going to leave. It was somebody's favorite book. It was somebody's favorite character, and now you've taken that from them. And then he said, it also works with the ends of big storylines. People feel like they've watched something to its completion. With my kids, I saw Endgame. I'm not sure they'd make Endgame the same given what they realized. You can't take Captain America off the table, remove Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, kill Black Widow. They really removed a lot of the big faces, big stars. Um, and then, but I think they thought, well, we'll be fine because we've got this new lineup and this is where we'll go from here. No, as I've gotten older and I've talked to my son's friends, all of whom are in their young 20s now, they're like, I don't need to see the Marvel stuff. Endgame was perfect. It was a perfect ending. And that's kind of where I left that world. And I'm like, wow, again, completing a storyline and tying up an arc can really, that's why I said I'm not sure they would do it the same because everything that came afterwards, nothing has touched on that success. I know for a fact there was a faction of people who wanted to make Deadpool, another Deadpool. They did not. The Marvel brass was like this. They would never give a really good reason. It was just they had their own plans, and it didn't fit with what they planned. It didn't fit. It didn't fit. Deadpool Wolverine got made because, as I was told for 2 years leading up to it, it was break in case of emergency. We don't want to do this, but if everything is going south, this is what the people want. Let's finally give the people what they want. So they gave the people what they wanted, and they really obviously it did bonkers um, because those characters are fun and they're proven and they're tested. And let's go to what I said 30 minutes ago. Comic books had gotten to a place where they wanted proven names. No more. We're not going to test the waters with fresh young talent and watch and see if they grow. We want to go back to, and I think we're having that this summer. Tom Cruise, movie star, Brad Pitt, movie star, Scarlett Johansson, movie star. People, Hollywood remembered. We actually really love movie stars. And in comic books, we like the characters that are super popular that work, like Daredevil, like Deadpool, who's been popular for 33 years, like Wolverine, who's been popular for 50 years. And so they finally made that movie and they got, an avalanche of success. I looked at like after home video, deadline.com did the entire profitability for the top 10 movies last year. And Deadpool was number two. And they showed the cost, the marketing, where the money went, and then what it made. And I'm telling you, Deadpool, Wolverine made a profit of almost $500 million, but $300 million of that profit was from pay on demand, uh, the 30 bucks people bought to watch it at their house before it went to streaming, and then DVD. Like those categories came in super strong for them. Look, I always knew that I was giving those kids up for adoption. But whatever my deals that I negotiated when I was a kid, when I was 2021, which is when those characters were being presented and offered to them, I'd say, hey, I have these characters. There's a Marvel Age magazine that says Rob Liefeld's new characters keep coming. Like there was no co's. It was just they were reporting accurately that these were from my sketchbook, from my notebook. But I understood also going into it that if so and so does script and so does this, that they get, a point, whatever, or they get a point. Okay. That was all stuff I knew. But I also knew that based on the contracts I was looking at, that these would carry with me. And when Marvel has gone into their, whether it's bankruptcy or whatever, the lawyers are always engaged. I stand my ground, and I reinforce those same deals. And so, like I said, it is with great pride that I uh, get a check, you know, for a cable action figure,
I
okay,
love that.
and for a cartoon, and for a video game, and for a movie. That is, I feel like I did it right. I took care of me, and I took care of my family in my 20s, and those aren't those are they are Deadpool and Cable. I can safely say this: over the course of 30 years, have made me millions and millions of dollars in passive income, and that's how it's supposed to be done. That's a good deal, and I feel like you know I'll just continue to watch. It's I do believe that because there was a period, I'll keep it a mystery period. There was a period where Marvel offered to buy me out. Well, you would want to know what that number is. No matter who you are, you would want to know what that number is. I said, I will entertain your offer. Then afterwards, I said, why are they doing this? I actually called a couple of my buddies who work at big giant companies like Apple, and I said, why am I getting this? He goes, they just don't ever want to see your name ever again. This is his professional opinion. He goes, your name is on a ledger twice a year for payouts, and they just don't want it. This is his opinion. They don't want to see your name. They would rather just get you out of the equation because twice a year, they're like, I can't believe we have to send payments to this asshole. So it's just it's a fun existence.
I love that.
Watching Deadpool get the signal boost is great. Why I wonder if uh, I wonder if I'm the reason they don't do more. I will always. There are certain categories. There should be a Deadpool cartoon on. Uh, just follow the logic. Why? Why isn't there a Deadpool cartoon? Why are you giving cartoons to these other lesser characters when a Deadpool cartoon would drive people crazy? My sons and their friends were re-engaged in video games with Marvel Void Rivals, and they have showed me, said, Dad, they'll turn the computer around, they'll turn their laptop. They go, Dad, look at this. I see the chat rooms. Everybody wants Deadpool and Void Rivals. Everybody. He is the holy Wolverine's already there.
Yeah.
Not, I'm sorry, it's not Void Rivals. It's what's it called? I miss. It's called. Is it called Marvel Rivals?
Is that the Neil Patrick Harris one?
No, no, that's the VR game. That
That's a
that's
VR game.
that's really exciting too.
Rivals. That's it.
Yeah. So if Deadpool, they want Deadpool in that game. The crowd wants him, and I mean, if he doesn't come in the next year, I'll think it's a suspicious, like kind of weird. But look, I'm really excited that Neil Patrick Harris is in the Deadpool family. You know, didn't he? Jim Carrey did Lemony Snicket in the movie, but then Neil Patrick Harris did Lemony Snicket in TV. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris is your go-to. That it's not going to be with that guy. It'll be with me.
Yeah,
He's
totally.
coming through. I thought that we were on vacation when I knew a video game was coming. I didn't know it was a VR game. But I mean, bottom line is it's really exciting in the same way that Jack Kirby would be excited. He hadn't worked for Marvel in 15 years, but he loved seeing his characters. Somebody do Captain America, somebody do Thor. you always love to see the interpretations of the stuff that wouldn't exist without you, the stuff that you generated, that you, and in this case, made the most popular. Like in comic books, you're gonna have to hit seven figures to compete with some of the numbers on my Deadpool stuff, and I'm not sure that's coming anytime soon. It hasn't happened in 33 years, and that's with Deadpool. And that's the other thing. I honestly believed, especially in the 90s, that our records were not going to stand. And I remember when Marvel got the Star Wars license back about 12 years ago from Dark Horse, and they put 100 covers on it. I thought, well, this is going to sell 5 million. This is going to do. It did, I think, just under a million. Like, but there could not have been more excitement about Star Wars at the time, and there was literally, if you count, over 100 covers on that thing. So I'm not sure that these seven-figure, numbers that Jim hit, that I hit, that Todd hit, that they could never hit again. I'm not sure they're coming back. They're not. I'm not sure they'll ever be revisited. We were kind of a perfect storm of people's just the frenzy that Todd on Spider-Man, Jim on X-Men, and myself on New Mutants and X-Force generated with these people, and we built a bigger legacy with Image Comics. And what I do want to say is, Image Comics is the greatest legacy that we all have. No matter Jim's not there, hasn't been there for about 1 year less than I haven't been there, but it's a great legacy for him too. The fact that we built this incredible creator-owned company that if you walk in, you will, and you walk out, you'll walk out owning it. Image does not ask for a piece of your creation, not like every company before or since has done. It's in your hands, you know. And look at that, young Robert Kirkman put that to good use. Two giant, two giant franchises. It doesn't get said enough. I'll say it here. Robert Kirkman is the most successful person to ever come from comic books.
Mm.
There are 20 seasons of Walking Dead. The characters are now selling me Spectrum subscriptions. Like, I go, are you seeing this? Invincible is a monster success. He has the two pillars that the thing I love to remind people, and they were both launched the same year. He launched his superhero comic book and his horror comic book, like within 6 months of each other, and they are giant titans of pop culture now. It's incredible. And he says, I always wanted to do Image Comics, and he said he drove to see Todd and myself and Jim when we were younger signing comics. And look at the fulfillment. It's just a great legacy. It's just a great legacy. I don't know if I answered all your questions,
You
especially
did.
that last one, but look, it's hopefully I get another 10 years at this business, and maybe a crankier version of me will show up that'll be even funnier, um, and and say even more salty things. I'm not quite. I said some stuff today, but it was all just truth. But there's some like what is it? The real scurrilous stuff that has yet to come.
Yeah.
That's still behind like the Iron Curtain. So
And I'm staying tuned. And this was definitely, that you're in the Return of the Jedi, phase of all this, and I'm excited to see where things go for you next. And you're always kind to your fans, and you're kind to me, and I really appreciate all our interactions. You're really
hey, Alex,
wonderful.
congratulations on all your success, dude. Keep at it, man. You get it. Grab the microphone, speak your mind, share your facts, get out there, shake the trees. Will I see you at Comic Con?
Yeah, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna go to your panel.
All right, buddy. Okay, well, I always see you. We always migrate around the artwork.
That's right, the original art area. That's right.
The original art area is like I probably spend a day's worth of the show just going between all those pages. They're so fun.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, well, hey, thank you for having me. Hopefully I was somewhat I had something to say.
You
I
did.
never know. I never know.
I've interviewed Steranko before too, and you
Yeah.
guys have a real similar, like, you're real sharp in how you describe things, and there is no two way. Like, you have a real intent of force of personality, of observation, and it's very objective and clear. And I highly respect that approach to conversation. I love it.
Alex, you honor me, buddy. I'm so excited. I can't wait for this to go up. I can't wait to see you. Thank you for having me on the show, buddy.